Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're talking about something that sounds really simple, but is genuinely one of the hardest things for a neurodivergent entrepreneur to do consistently, and that's actually ending the workday. Not running out of energy and falling away from your desk, not getting pulled into dinner or kids or whatever has you stopping work, but mentally still being there 3 hours later. Actually finishing, deliberately closing the day in a way that signals to your brain that work is done and you're allowed to rest. If you've ever found yourself lying in bed at 11 o'clock, mentally composing emails or suddenly remember something that you forgot to do, a lot of us have been there. This video is for you. Before we get into it, my name is Shannon Schroeder. I am the F-Bomb coach. I help ADHD women build sustainable systems for their businesses and their lives. There's a difference between abandoning your workday and actually finishing it. Abandoning it looks like this. It's 6 o'clock, you're exhausted, you close the laptop because you have to make dinner or because you just can't think about it anymore, but there's no real closure. The tasks that didn't get done are still floating around in your head. The email that you meant to send is still sitting in your draft folder in your mind. The thing that you need to do tomorrow hasn't been written down anywhere, and so it's a nagging thought all night long. You've stopped working physically, but your brain hasn't stopped working at all. Finishing looks different. It's a deliberate act. You review, you close loops so things don't stay in your head, you capture what's unfinished, and you make a plan for tomorrow. That signals to your brain that the workday is really over. The external result looks the same. You stopped working, but what happens internally to your nervous system after that point is completely different. There are some specific reasons why this is harder for neurodivergent brains. Working memory in ADHD brains tends to hold open loops, unfinished tasks, unresolved questions, things you meant to do, and it holds it automatically and persistently. So it's just that nagging little thing in the back of your head. Closing the laptop doesn't close those loops. They stay active in the background, which is a big part of why ADHD brains struggle to genuinely switch off. Hyperfocus is another factor. It doesn't come with a natural stopping point built in. You can be deep in something and have no idea that 3 hours have passed until something external pulls you away. Time blindness means that the end of the workday either sneaks up on you without warning or drags out in a way that makes it hard to feel like it's actually time to stop. And for a lot of neurodivergent business owners, rejection sensitivity plays a role too. Unfinished tasks feel like evidence of inadequacy, which keeps the brain spinning on them long after you've technically stopped working. You beat yourself up for not finishing all the things that you should have done. Or if you have something that you thought was done and then you think about how you could have made it better. Again, more nagging voices. Let's talk about what it costs you to abandon your day instead of finishing it. The most immediate cost is rest quality. If your brain never received a clear signal that work is done, it stays in a low-level problem-solving mode even when you're trying to relax or sleep. It's the lying in bed composing emails experience. Your body is horizontal, but your brain is still at the office. Over time, this erodes your sleep quality, which then erodes your cognitive performance the next day, which makes everything harder, including the executive function tasks that are already challenging for you. There's also decision fatigue carryover. When you don't properly close the day out, you bring the cognitive weight of every unresolved task, every unresolved decision into the next morning. Instead of starting fresh, you start already carrying part of yesterday's load. And there's a creativity cost too. Genuine insight and creative thinking require real downtime. Your brain needs some real rest to refill the well. A brain that never stops working never accesses that deeper processing that happens when you get true rest. So what does a shutdown routine do, neurologically speaking? First, it sends a clear signal to your brain that work is complete. Your brain responds to rituals and patterns. A consistent sequence of closing actions becomes associated over time with the transition out of work mode, and your nervous system starts to respond to it the way it would a familiar cue. Second, it closes loops. When you write down the unfinished tasks, capture the ideas that are floating around in your head, you make a plan for tomorrow, you are giving your working memory permission to let it go. It doesn't have to hold on to those things because you got to remember them for tomorrow. You've written it down, it's captured, so your brain knows I don't have to hold this anymore. And then because you don't have to hold it, there's no risk of it being forgotten because they're captured. Third, it creates a psychological boundary, a real moment of transition rather than that vague drift of, okay, the laptop is closed, so that means I'm off work. And over time, the routine itself becomes the signal. Your brain learns that when you do these things, the day is done and now you can rest. Let me walk you through the five components of an effective shutdown routine. You don't have to do all of these in any kind of complicated way. The whole thing can take 10 to 15 minutes once you have the habit built. Step one is a quick review of the day. Again, this is not a judgment. This is a scan. This is data gathering. What got done? What didn't? What do you need to remember? Step two is capture. Any unfinished tasks, open loops, ideas that are floating around, things you're worried about forgetting, they have to go into a trusted system, something where you know you're going to be able to access it. So if you use a task manager or a notebook, a voice memo, somewhere outside of your brain, because you need to let your brain let it go. Step three is a brief plan for tomorrow. What are your top three things for tomorrow? Just three. Not everything you'd like to get done, but what are the three that have to get done? Write them down before you close out so that tomorrow you just have to show up and you have a starting point. You don't have to make any decisions when you start work. Step four is a workspace reset. Close the tabs, file the papers, clear enough physical and digital space that tomorrow isn't starting in today's chaos. And number five, the fifth step is a signal, the specific action that tells your brain we're done. Maybe it's actually physically closing your laptop. Maybe it's folding the sweater that you wear when you're at your desk. Maybe it's putting away your pens for the day. Whatever small signal you can give your brain to say we are done. That's what you want. And I want to spend a minute on that signal specifically because it's really an underestimated piece of the routine. The signal is a final deliberate action that your brain will come to associate with the end of work. It is very simple, and it sounds almost too simple, but there's a neurological logic behind it. Consistent repeated associations build strong mental patterns. When you always do the same specific thing at the end of your workday, your brain starts to process that action as a transition cue. And over time, that thing will trigger the shift in your nervous system. When you first start, you may not feel it in your nervous system because you don't trust yourself. You know how things work. So you need to give yourself that signal. And the more often that you start feeling that signal and seeing that signal and experiencing that signal, it's letting your nervous system know that it's okay. Cal Newport writes about saying the phrase shutdown complete out loud at the end of his workday, which sounds a little bit ridiculous, right? Like who needs to say, okay, shutdown complete, workday's over. To say it out loud seems a little bit silly, but it works because it's specific, it's verbal, and it's very distinct. Other examples that work well: closing a specific app that you only use for work, physically changing out of work clothes, going into something comfy, a short walk around the block, making a cup of tea or some other drink that you only have at the end of the day. The content of the signal matters less than the consistency of it. So it's something that you have to be willing to do every single day to signal your brain and your body that you're good. And let's talk about closing loops because this is a step that a lot of people skip or do incompletely, but it's really one of the most important. An open loop is anything your brain is actively tracking: a task you haven't done, a decision you haven't made, a commitment that you made to someone that hasn't been acted on, an idea that you had that hasn't been captured anywhere. Your brain treats open loops as urgent, which means it keeps returning to them automatically to make sure that they don't get dropped, that they don't get forgotten. This is helpful when you're in the middle of working on something, but it's not helpful at 10 o'clock at night when you're trying to go to sleep. Closing a loop doesn't mean that the task is finished. Yes, that is one way of closing a loop, but it doesn't have to be the only way. It means that the task has a home. It's written in your task manager. It's on tomorrow's list. It has a date attached to it. It's been delegated. Something has been done to it. Once your brain trusts that the loop has been closed and it's safe, then it can release it from working memory and it's not trying to hold on to it so it doesn't get forgotten. That release is what makes genuine rest possible. The shutdown routine is largely a loop closing exercise. And here's something important. There are going to be days when the shutdown routine feels most tempting to skip, but those are the days that you really need it most. When you have a messy, messy day, when the day went badly, when you're frustrated, when you're demoralized, when you didn't get the things done that you planned, those are the days when abandoning the closure, when abandoning your um, ending day routine can do the most damage. Because in those days, the open loops are more emotionally charged. You already feel bad. The self-judgment is really loud. And the unfinished business feels heavier because you thought you were going to get it done and you didn't. So the shutdown routine on a hard day serves a slightly different purpose. It's not just about closing loops and planning tomorrow. It's about drawing a line at the end of the day and saying, this day is complete, whatever it contained, whether it was good, whether it was bad. When you review the day, keep it factual. What happened? What didn't? What needs to move? Separate the facts from the story your brain wants to attach to them. Not, I didn't get that done because I'm lousy at this, or I should have been able to draft 5 more emails. That should have kind of language that I just should have, or why couldn't I? That's not fact. The fact is, I need to write 3 more emails or 5 more emails. I need to finish the sales page. You need to separate the fact from the story because the story is what's going to drag you down. It's going to make you feel bad after you walk away from your desk. Before you close out, find something that happened today that counts. Not just the really great things, but something that you got it done. It counted. It's going to move the needle. Your brain needs to close the day with something other than a list of failures. So let's talking about building this habit because knowing you should do it and actually doing it consistently are 2 very different things for a lot of you. Start small. Don't design a 20-minute elaborate closing routine that you'll do perfectly for 3 days and then abandon. Start with a 2-minute minimum viable shutdown. Close the tabs, write tomorrow's top 3, say your signal phrase. That's it. It counts. You're done. Anchor that routine to something that already happens at the end of the day. Dinner, picking up kids, feeding the dog. Whatever existing behavior you currently have can be the trigger for the new one. Use a labeled alarm. Not just an alarm that goes off at 5 p.m., but label it. Shut down time. Close it out. The label does the cognitive work. It reminds your brain of what you're supposed to be doing. And make the routine genuinely easy to start. If your shutdown involves finding a notebook that's buried under 3 days of paperwork, you won't do it. Everything you need for the routine should be right there, ready to go, easy to get. Remove the friction between you and starting that shutdown routine, and then it will be easier to actually follow through and do the whole routine. I want to talk about the morning payoff because I think it's one of the most motivating reasons to build the habit, especially for brains that struggle with task initiation. When you do a proper shutdown, you wake up the next morning with tomorrow's top 3 already decided. You don't have to spend your morning energy figuring out where to start. You already know. Your workspace is ready, physical and digital, so there's no setup cost eating into your momentum. Your brain arrives with lower carry forward debt because you closed out properly. So you're not carrying the things from yesterday. The things you need to address are there in your face in your top 3. The previous day is complete. The slate is as clean as you're going to get it. And for neurodivergent brains, that start of the day, already feeling behind before anything has happened, can weigh you down. So having a clean start is a good thing for you. It's the difference between a day that builds momentum and a day that spends the first hour feeling like you have to catch up. So here's your one thing for this week. Build a 2-minute minimum viable shutdown and do it for 5 days. Here's what it might look like. Spend 30 seconds reviewing what happened today. The facts. Capture at least one open loop into a trusted system. And if you're not sure what your trusted system is, experiment. Maybe it's sticky note. Maybe you keep a pad of paper in front of your computer that it's open space, nothing else sits on top of it. Then write tomorrow's top 3 on a sticky note or in your planner, and then do your signal. Your signal can be anything that is consistent and deliberate. Close the laptop and say out loud that you're done. Make a specific drink, take a short walk, pick something and do it the same way every day this week. Then Notice what Monday morning feels like compared to how it usually feels. Notice whether you slept differently. Notice whether you started Tuesday from a different place than you usually do. A small experiment, do it for a week. It's going to give you real data around your real life. Then you can adjust. Once you start to feel what's working and what's not, then you adjust. Thank you for giving me your time today. If this helped you, please hit like, subscribe, pass it on to someone else that you think that it would help, and I'll see you in the next video.